right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for your patience this afternoon. I'm going to be making a statement about an officer-involved shooting that occurred earlier this afternoon. Let me just introduce some of the folks that are here with me. I have Assistant City Manager Ray Ariano is here, as well as the Interim Director of the Office of Police Oversight, Ms. Sylvia Hardman, as well as members of the APD Executive and Command Staff. Thank you for being here. This call started as a, I'm going to kind of go through the evolution of the call. It ultimately turned into a SWAT call out, which we did provide a statement earlier, and I'll be going recapping the things that happened earlier as well to just kind of catch everybody up, but I'm going to kind of take it from the very beginning. At 9:20 a.m. this morning, a 911 call was received of a disturbance. It appeared to be a family disturbance, and within moments of the call coming in, it was upgraded to a gun hotshot, indicating that the male that was involved in this disturbance had a gun. At 9:22 a.m., officers were dispatched to that call, and they arrived on scene at 9:35 a.m. During the call, and as the call was coming in, it was indicated that children were involved in this, and potentially it was a child hostage situation. But when officers arrived, the male did not have the children in his custody and was out in the street on the initial call came in the 6100 block of Fairway Street, but ultimately the male was walking around in the middle of Caddy Street, which is very, very near there. As officers arrived, as I indicated, the subject was walking around on foot. He had the gun in his hand, and officers began telling him to please put the gun down. We're trying to de-escalate the situation with him, and during this time, the subject several times put the gun to his head and indicated that he was going to kill himself. At 9:42 a.m., so approximately 7 minutes later, a SWAT page was initiated to go ahead and have SWAT respond to the scene. During this time, the officers continued to attempt to speak to the subject, asking him to drop the gun. However, the subject was quite agitated. He refused to do so. At 9:46 a.m., one of our crisis intervention officers, or a mental health officer, arrived on scene and began to try to engage the subject, again trying to de-escalate this situation. At 9:51 a.m., the subject actually made the statement saying he would shoot himself if officers refused to shoot him. At 9:59 a.m., the first SWAT officer arrived on scene, and then at 10:10 a.m., the first officer that is qualified as a hostage negotiator arrived on scene. What this became was an open-air SWAT call, and we call it an open air because they're not in a vehicle, they're not in a structure, they are simply out in the street, but they are threatening themselves and perhaps threatening others. And officers during this time, concerned for this is in the middle of a neighborhood, attempted to evacuate all of the homes that were near there. However, there were some neighbors that decided that they did not want to evacuate and they were simply going to shelter in place. For the next almost 2 hours, our crisis intervention and hostage negotiators attempted to, again, de-escalate this situation. They had lengthy conversations with this subject, both over a PA, which was more one-way, in other words, trying to give instructions and directions to the subject, as well as ultimately giving a phone to the subject and having conversations with him over the phone. The subject had placed the gun in his waistband. It was clearly visible to the officers and, of course, very much in reach of the subject at that time. And they, and again, this went on for almost 2 hours. Finally, at 11:51 a.m., officers approached, and what the intent was to use less lethal means to incapacitate the subject and to get him into custody without serious harm. There were multiple taser deployments that occurred, as well as the deployment of an impact munition, all of which were ineffective. And at that time, the subject then reached for the gun and attempted to pull it from his waistband. At that time, a SWAT officer deployed his weapon, his duty weapon, and struck the subject, and the subject went down. It took just over 1 minute to make sure that the subject was no longer a threat, and officers quickly approached and began life-saving measures on the subject. Ultimately, those were unsuccessful, and at 11:59 a.m., the subject was pronounced deceased. The subject is a 29-year-old Hispanic male. There were no officer injuries that occurred during this incident. The SWAT officer involved has been on the department for 6 years. He and the other officers will be placed on administrative duty, and that will be pending, of course, the 2 different investigations that you hear me talk about when these incidents occur. The criminal investigation, which includes our Special Investigations Unit, or conducted by the Special Investigations Unit with cooperation with the District Attorney's Office, and of course the administrative investigation, which is conducted by Internal Affairs with oversight from our Office of Police Oversight. You know, it is always a horribly tragic thing when something like this happens. We always hope that we can resolve these type of situations peacefully, and in the vast majority of cases we are able to resolve them peacefully. I want to just kind of highlight that we brought all means to bear in this to try to de-escalate this situation, including lengthy conversations with the subject, interactions and engagements from our crisis intervention team officer, as well as our hostage negotiation team officers. And then ultimately, we tried to deploy less lethal weapons in order to get the subject into custody. Like I said, it's a tragedy. My heart certainly goes out to the family of the person involved, goes out to my officers who were involved, because I don't want anyone to ever have to go through this. I mentioned it, earlier, and it should be noted that there was, of course, a female who was involved in the original assault, who was involved in the original reason for the call. She is safe and unharmed, as are her children, and they are with our APD's Victim Services Unit. This incident was captured on multiple camera systems, and per APD policy, we will be releasing the video within 10 working days. Finally, if anybody in the public has information related to this shooting, related to this incident, they're asked to please call 911, or they can call Crime Stoppers at 512-472-TIPS. Those are my prepared comments. I can take a few questions.
The brother of the victim, the suspect, said that he asked to go in and talk to his brother to try to de-escalate. He said his words were that he begged police to just let him go in, that he thought he could be more effective, but he was turned down. Explain that.
I can't explain it. That's the first that I'm hearing that, so I would have to look into it to find out what the circumstances were. Sometimes it's not safe to allow family members into an active, ongoing police scene. That might have been the case there, but I would have to look into it to find out what the circumstances were.
The brother also says he doesn't think, he wasn't down there, I know, but he doesn't think his brother was armed. Do you have any doubt in your mind that the man was armed?
I've seen the video myself. The video will be released. The man was armed.
Is it protocol to have family members maybe communicate with the suspect over phone in these types of situations?
We have done it in the past, and it just depends. Every circumstance is going to be a little bit different. It's all going to depend on, can we keep that family member safe while that's happening, interactions with the family member to ensure that we're not going to, You know, every situation is just different, and I'll just leave it at that to say that I can't say if that decision was made, why it was made. That'll be part of the investigation.
Was it the first time that something occurred in the same address with the man involved?
I don't have a history on that address or on this individual right now.
Do you have his identity?
He has been identified, but obviously we've got to go through our process and the investigation, and I anticipate releasing the names of both him and the officer involved within the coming days.
I'm gonna ask that kind of a different way. We have a man who says he's his brother, and he's the one that we've been talking to. He says the man is Antonio Gonzalez. I mean, the whole family was out there, that they're very aware. Can you confirm that?
I can't confirm that right now. I don't even have his name.
Are you able to say anything about Officer Martin from Liberty Hill this morning?
You know, it has been a really rough day. I was awoken this morning a little bit after 6 a.m. that you know, that one of my officers on his way home after working his patrol shift after serving the city was tragically killed. And to, you know, obviously to follow right on the heels with this is it's incredibly tough on, you know, on the men and women of the police department, but it's also, I think, you know, it's tough on this community. We lost a hero today in Officer Martin, and you know, I'm still trying to process that as I'm standing here giving comments on this officer involved shooting. So you'll forgive me if I, you know, if I don't have all the words that I would like right now, but just know that I'm hurting. Our cops are hurting, and we're you know, we've got some grieving and some things to get through in the next few days. Thank you all very much.